The question comes up many times: can a person who's committed suicide be saved? Now, this is a very grave and sobering subject. This is not something to be uh, caustic and destructive about. The mind of an individual who takes their own lives is something that most of the time has never been understood. Why someone would be taught that life would be better to be done without than to be lived in is not understood, particularly by a person who's been taught about eternity and peace with God in heaven. The greatest aspect of suicide is that it removes the chance for tomorrow. To concern ourselves with the hopelessness and the helplessness and the despair of an individual in that state of mind is talked about in a lot of places in the Bible, but it is always discussed as someone who gave up. But suicide is committed other than ways of physically taking your life. Suicide is committed by being a part of a denominational church when the Bible teaches about the Church of Christ. It's suicidal to obey the doctrines and teachings of men. Jesus said in Matthew 15:9, "In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Why call ye me Lord, Lord, and do not the things that I command you?" And yet there are people who would rather stay in their denomination than obey God. And when they do that, that's committing suicide. It may not be physical, but in an essence of time, it will become such. Because Jesus taught, if you die in your sin, whither I go, you cannot come. Now, the sadness about suicide, not only the heart-broken, painful despair of an individual who has given up on life, who thinks life is not worth having or living. The hardness about suicide is tomorrow has ceased. You see, the advantage of living from day to day is that there's always the opportunity, the anticipation, and the desire that things can get better. But when the mind has decided that it's not worth it, the individual that's behind that mind, the I that's within us, determines that it's over. There's no chance of ever having improvement. Or the lack of faith that God can work things out in our lives if we'll obey Him and be obedient to His command is the essence of suicide. I think a lot of times people that have committed suicide didn't intend to go that far. There was an accidental thing or something that caused it to happen when they didn't expect it to or weren't actually planning it to be such. But considering that it might be something as a reality for a person who planned and prepared for it, what a state of mind or condition of heart. What an individual who has given up on God. He's all we got. When you give up on God, you've thrown in the towel. When you give up on what Christ has planned and what Christ has made possible, you've said thank you, but no thank you. How can you face eternity being a part of the humanity of mankind, a species that was created so that one day it might have fellowship with God, and you say thank you, but no thank you? Well, the way to do that is to be taught there is no life after death, is to be taught that there's no punishment for the disobedient, is to be taught that there's no God. You see, an individual who says there's no God, there's no punishment, there's nothing that follows life, that once I get through this, it's over, does not understand the nature called human. Humanity The eye that is within us is not our heart. It's not our eyes. It's not our mind. It's not our body. It is that soul and spirit, that instrument that is placed in us by God, from God, of God, as He's the Father of spirits, that allows us to know there is a brighter day coming, a hope for tomorrow. And the way that this hope is secured is to seek it with every part of our being. But to give up on that? Who can cause somebody to stop eating just so they'll starve to death? What kind of will is it, or insanity, that these people possess to beat and deprive and starve the human body so it'll quit functioning? Who wins the battle? What was the battle they were fighting to start with? Was it not the innocent that was punished? And the guilty, or the guilt, got away for a moment of time until eternity began, with succeeding in destroying the only hope and chance that they had? It is so sad. It is so heart-rending for a person to be associated with a friend or a loved one who's given up on all things. Nobody they can talk to. Nobody they can have confidence in. Nobody that has anything for them as a hope for tomorrow. Only God can make that judgment, and that judgment will not be something that is left to you and I. We're left to wonder why. We're left to question all of the things that we thought and communicated with and discussed with the individual, but we'll never know really why. Some people leave what they call suicide notes. You just wonder how long it takes to write that and what they were going through as it was written. And did they really understand about heaven and hell, punishment and torture? Did they really weigh the values that eternity would hold? Had they been taught that there is a God, that He is love, and that He has mercy and compassion, and that if there's anybody going to ever give you a chance or give you a break or give you hope, it's going to be God. And of course, all of us love ourselves, but to find somebody who loves us as much as God, as much as He did, give up on Him? You see, folks, people are just not given the right part of the playbook to follow. And when a person has decidedly determined that there's no reason to have confidence in God and think that by taking their life in this body, they have escaped life, whether it's suicidal denominational obedience, whether it's suicidal eating enough to destroy your body in debauchery, whether it's suicidal sexual infanticide so that you destroy the competency and the decency and the integrity that you have as an individual, whether it's, there's so many ways that people commit suicide. And what usually they think of when you talk about suicide is somebody instantly ending their life. But it didn't start that way. It's a process that began and increased and overwhelmed and then destroyed. How sad it is that somebody can't get through, or somebody wasn't taught at an early age, or somebody just didn't try to lend a hand to help. Or maybe the individual wouldn't accept the help. But it's still sad to give up on God. Because when you've given up on God in this world, you've given up on God in the world to come. There's no chance to repent. There's no chance to be baptized into Christ. There's no chance, even if you're a child of God, to repent and pray for forgiveness. The time of death closes the door. It's once appointed unto man to die, and after that the judgment. It's a sad thing. It's coming about more often these days than before because people are taught there is no God.